concrete foreign policy, but about cultural needs of the elites. The cultural needs of the elites, I mean, I'm simplifying for demonstration, for the non-Russian elites, Ukrainian, Caucasian, Central Asian, Baltic, by the way, have three types of needs. They are both dependent, but they are dependent in different ways. So, need number A, I'm speaking about the non-Russian elites, so the new stakeholder elites in this country. So you have a newly established autonomy in political decision making, and you need frames, рамки, исторические культурные рамки, historical cultural frames for the understanding of this new reality. So you are searching for historical models, real or imaginary, to show that this actual cultural, political state autonomy is not new, it's not accidental, but it has deep historical cultural frames. Naturally, a very different national histories. You have a more than 1,000-year history. The Kyrgyz and Kazakh nations were created by the Soviet Union from tribal societies. So the stories are very different. I'm not going into the details to show what's the difference between Central Asia, where the new nations were planned by Soviet national planners, and by, let's say, mainly Georgian and Armenian nations with a very different history, and to show inside of the Caucasus how the Turk population of Azerbaijan was calling itself different ways in different forms. So how the same cultural element was using for itself, I'm speaking about images, very different names. For example, when I started to read old textbooks on the Caucasian history, I'm not a historian, not like you, and so I didn't understood that in the, descriptions that who are these Tartars in Dagestan, and they were all the time speaking about Tartars, and I didn't know who are those Tartars in Azerbaijan, and then later understood that the Azeris are the Tartars, of course, but so just an example, or the most nationalistic Ukrainians in Lvov, in Lemberg, in that time, they were establishing a Ruskoye общество. So they were calling themselves Ruski or Rusimi or something like that. So I'm not saying that they were Russians, and I'm not saying that the Azeris are Tatars. I'm speaking about that you have one story when even the nation names are changing all the time, or nations are created by the Soviets, and naturally you have historical patterns of nations naturally on very different territories. So the nations are moving with their territories. So as a result of that, you're using all sorts of historical stuff, I would call it stuff, not reality, for showing these frames. Point B, it's very important to show for all of the non-Russian nations of the former non-Russian elites, and speaking about elites, that they had alternative sources of modernization, that modernization came not from Moscow. So, and everybody tries to show other sources. Even in a way ignoring the Russian source, and to show that yes, all other sources of influences which were made sometimes very important, in sometimes less important, but who cares about it? It's very open to show the alternative sources of modernization. These are foreign policy needs, very understandable. And there is something third which I'm calling recombinant capacities as demonstration of independence. So to show that in which ways, in which forms, all the new forms could come together. So these are all approaches which are interested in new ideological capacities. So practically they are all needs for new ideologies. And for these new ideologies, different other sorts of self-understanding are used. Naturally, I mean, in this post-Soviet situation, not only the non-Russian elites, but the Russian elites are also interested in their symbolic forms of cultural roots and dominances. And I'm describing three elements of that, which are also related to actual foreign policy-oriented approaches, which are new approaches. This is very important. And I mean, it's a commonplace in the Western and for me very superficial literature, and you love to, I mean the non-Russian elites love to repeat, new imperialism. It's or imperialism, or the imperial is still there. No, it's a new imperial. It's not. It's not reconstruction of the Russian imperialism. It's a new imperialism, which is not nicer, not better, or not worse. It's something new. So, for the building of that new imperial concept, you need again cultural roots, and I'm underlining here 3 points of those cultural roots. A, I will call it symbolic reconstruction of former state power. Clients, dependents, court members, etc. So it's very important to underline that in the old Russian understanding of the old Russian imperial concept, naturally, you had one state, a strong central state, and a strong central apparatus, and that was central for them. For the new type of this cultural self-understanding, is very important to underline other sources of historical existing dependencies. I'm just calling two pieces of that. I'm not saying again what is good, what is bad. We are speaking about ideological constraints. The first is the distribution of the Islam to several parts of Central Asia. So you know that naturally you had the old parts of important parts, mainly is Uzbekistan, which was part of the oldest contest of Muslim civilizations in the 8th century. And naturally those major oasis cities like Bukhara, Samarkand, and Khiva, Kokand were creating a very genuine Muslim civilization. At the beginning it was Arabic, and very soon it became Persian. And practically a significant part of the hard culture of the Persian poetry, for example, was done in Central Asia. Avicenna is coming from Bukhara. Rudaki is coming from the Tajik places, and so on and so forth. So you have that sort of very ancient part of Central Asian Muslim civilization. But you had the other part of Central Asia, it's Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, where you had nomadic tribes living on a huge territory, which were practically non-Islam. They had a sort of influence of the Islam from the south, from Bukhara and from Samarkand, but it was an influence of very superficial. And what is interesting in this Russian understanding of the story, which is by the way a historical fact, that they were pagans, so they were Yazichniki, mostly. And the Tsars, and especially Yekaterina, Catherine, believe that it's better if they have a faith, a strong faith. So it's better if they are religious, and they are not pagans, but you have a sort of nice religion. For several reasons, I don't know what, I'm not a historian of that period and epoch, they were not interested in sending Pravoslav priests to them. So they did it in the Volga, so several Volga nations, Chuvach and the others, they became baptized by the Russians and they became Christians, but they were not doing that with the tribes of Central Asia. But their idea was that they could be Muslims. They are Asians, Muslims, why not? It's not bad. And they had their own Muslim elite, in the 18th century, the Tartars of Kazan, rich merchants, local cultural elite, etc. And Katerina was financing the distribution, the diffusion of the Islam by the